Hey folks, welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. Hey there, Adrian.
Hey, how you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing quite well, thanks. I see you're sporting what looks like a Captain Beefheart shirt.
Yeah. I wish the camera would go down lower so you could see this cool picture.
Yeah. That is the picture of Captain Beefheart wearing a trout mask. This is one of those albums that you have to hear, and then you have to hear it again, and then you have to hear it again.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that. Oh, Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band, 1969.
Oh, yeah.
So I came across this great video on the Vox channel about this album and a little bit about what was going on at the time with Captain Beefheart, and I thought we'd take a look at that. Okay, so without further ado, this is on the Vox channel, and I think they did a great job with it. I just took a quick look at it earlier, but we're going to take a closer look at it now.
This is Trout Mask Replica. On the album cover is Captain Beefheart, a fish on his face and a top hat on his head. The image is surreal, it's grotesque, and it's the perfect visual depiction of the music you're about to hear. The 80 minutes of music on Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band have been compared to rusty barbed wire. And the New York Times once said that Captain Beefheart's voice makes Tom Waits sound like Julie Andrews. But here's the thing. 41 years after its release in 1969, this cacophonous double album was inducted into the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry, right alongside Al Green's classic Let's Stay Together and the American standard Take Me Out to the Ballgame.
Okay, so does any of that surprise you, Adrian?
Oh, I'm still processing it.
Yeah, I had to think about it myself for a little bit. I'm like, and actually I thought about it and thought, no, actually, I think that does make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Because there's just something so unique about this, even within Captain Beefheart's own discography.
His third official album. The second album is the only thing I have a question about because it was, I think, strictly personal. It was going to be released, but it wasn't until later on, and Mirror Man was released as the second album.
Yeah, that is the confusing part, is Mirror Man. That always kind of throws me for a loop, but we'll get to that later on.
Yes.
Not only that, a number of iconic musicians, visual artists, and creative thinkers have named Trout Mask Replica a shining point of inspiration for their work. How can an album that sounds like the musical equivalent of barbed wire be recognized as such a significant piece of American culture?
It's worth noting it's Andy Partridge from XTC that said barbed wire.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that said that.
I thought it was interesting comparing it to barbed wire.
Yeah. I think a lot of people find it to be a very abrasive sound. I mean, it's really got that to it, the kind of the ping off the strings. And I mean, it serves a purpose, don't get me wrong, but that's just the style that he chose for a lot of this.
Let's start with Don Van Vliet, known as Captain Beefheart. He grew up in California on the edge of the Mojave Desert, and by the age of 10 was an incredible sculptor. Growing up, he became captivated by the blues, perfected by musicians like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, some 2,000 miles away.
I can hear Howlin' Wolf in him, no doubt.
Just as much he was entranced by the free jazz of Ornette Coleman and John Coltrane. By the late 1960s, he had an album and a small-time hit, a cover of Bo Diddley's Diddy Wah Diddy. For his next project, he signed to his former high school classmate Frank Zappa's label with a clear request for unbridled creative freedom to do whatever the hell he wanted for his next project. By 1969, Trout Mask Replica was created, and those years were a glorious mess for everyone involved in its making.
That coming across?
This is Samuel Andreev. He's a composer who studied composition and music analysis at the Paris Conservatory.
A number of things. First of all, it's an album that I'm personally obsessed with. I think it's a phenomenal work of art.
It is mind-bendingly creative and honestly pretty difficult to listen to, but its uniqueness can be discovered within its songs. especially Frownland.
Well, the purpose of Frownland as an album opener is to plunge you headfirst into a maelstrom of just absolute strangeness. Here's something interesting you can do as an experiment. Compare it to a piece like You Really Got Me by the Kinks.
What?
He's just being theoretical.
I know.
We know.
I'm kidding.
He makes a great point.
You really got me going. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, so the main guitar riff in that song, da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, that's 2 notes, okay? And that's what the song is built out of.
The most important thing is that the rhythm guitar, lead guitar, bass, drums, and vocals are all locked into one rhythm. They're playing in sync.
So contrast that with Frownland, where in a minute and 40 seconds you have no fewer than, I think, like 23 individual motifs.
It's actually 21, but that's still a whole lot.
And these 23 motifs are all individually rather complex. Added to that is the fact that they're all heard stacked on top of each other all the time.
Not only that, the traditional roles of rock instrumentation found in songs like You Really Got Me were just completely thrown out the window. Just listen closely to the first 5 seconds of the track. You'll immediately notice that the rhythm is off kilter. That's because the rhythm guitar and the lead guitar are playing a 5/7 polyrhythm. That means one guitar is playing 5 beats per measure at the same time the other is playing 7. Okay, so try clapping 5 beats in one hand and the same time you clap 7 in another.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm pretty sure I did the same thing.
Not only is the piece polyrhythmic, it's also polytonal. Both guitars are playing in different keys throughout the piece against each other, and often they're changing keys. Typically, the bass would ground the harmony and the rhythm, but here it's treated like a third guitar, so it lives in its own world as well. And it's playing chords, which just rarely happens in rock music. And on top of that, you have these insanely virtuosic drums that have another function altogether.
The drummer is trying to take elements of what the guitar is doing and what the bass is doing and basically glue them together so that the piece coheres.
In the end, you have a really condensed song with multiple instruments constantly changing keys, tempos, and time signatures, and across the entire album, this happens.
Trout Mask Replica is a masterpiece because it does something that is almost impossibly hard to do. It comes from a very rare place of art making.
So, art scholars talk about the sentimental versus the naive. On one end of the spectrum, you have sentimental art that comes from a place of a lot of formal training. At the other end, you have naive art that is almost childlike. It exists purely because the compulsion to make it was so strong.
The great thing about Trout Mask Replica is that they literally splice together naive impulses into a structure. So it sounds totally improvised. It sounds like they're making it up on the spot, but they rehearsed these pieces. That's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
It seems to me kind of what they did.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good way to describe what it sounds like.
Yeah.
They're all doing their own thing, which is not particularly sophisticated in and of itself, but then it's strung with these other bits. I mean, with these other parts, and they're all doing their own thing, often, not necessarily always with each other, but within the same. Anyway, she said it much better than I did. What are your thoughts?
Well, the recording process for this album was quite different than other albums. Usually you do the drums first and then the instruments and then the vocals. This apparently was done in the exact reverse. They would get the vocals written first, and then they would write the guitar and bass parts, and then they would add in the drums. John Drumbo French would kind of tie everything together.
Wow.
In the drums, he would just come up with a rhythm that like goes along, and go along usually with the guitars or something, but just goes along with the whole song and really, again, glues it together.
So he's got to do it on top of what's already been done, which is the exact opposite of how most bands would do it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. He also did a lot of the arrangement on the album too, apparently.
How do you teach these musicians to play your music?
Whip. Kind whip. No, I mean, a kind quip. A kind, how? A tape, with the piano, a tape.
Captain Beefheart was the singular creative force behind Trout Mask Replica, and he composed every song on the piano without knowing how to play it. He pretty much didn't know how to play any instrument. But he had his magic band, which consisted of remarkable young musicians like Zoothorn Rollo, Drumbo, and tenor Jimmy Simmons and Rockhead Morton. Their job? Translate Captain Beefheart's avant-garde approach into a blues and free jazz-inspired rock album based on the music he created on an instrument he really didn't know how to play. Let that sink in for a second. A piano has 88 keys, and with two hands you can easily play the lowest and the highest keys at the same time if you wanted to. Don Van Vliet expected those same sounds from his two guitarists and a bassist whose instrument ranges were just vastly different.
That's funny. What do you mean? What's the problem? And you too, Adrian, as a guitar player, you know what's going to happen if somebody asks you to play like the low A on the piano on the guitar.
Right.
Not going to go well.
Right. Piano's really got the best range of any instrument that I can think of at the moment.
Here's Bill Harkleroad. You might remember him as Zoothorn Rollo.
I think it was just that there were parts, and then, well, why can't you play those notes? What's wrong with you? Why can't you play that note that's not on the guitar 7 notes at a time? So there was no choice to do it.
Should have let it run.
He used to say, "You think you got a hard job, man? I got to sing to that shit."
And that is John French, the drummer. He had the arduous task of helping other members of the band learn everything that came out of Don's piano.
Sometimes I wondered if he knew that it was in a different time signature, but he didn't know what a time signature was, no.
They painstakingly rehearsed over the course of a year until they were able to record the entire double album all the way through in just a few hours.
Fast and bulbous.
Fast and bulbous.
Okay, do it again.
I love that. I love those words.
Fast and bulbous.
That's right, the mascara snake. Fast and bulbous.
Bulbous also tapered.
Yeah, but you've got to wait until I say. Also, a tin teardrop.
Oh, man. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Trying to keep that.
I think I can identify all those voices too. I think Frank Zappa is the one in the control room, and as Captain Beefheart and the Mascara Snake.
Who's that?
Is Beefheart's unidentified cousin who plays a bass clarinet on the album.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Okay.
Christ.
When I first came across Trout Mask Replica, I was instantly captivated by the sound of those 3 words strung together. Every song title made me laugh, and so I listened to it, and it instantly expanded my understanding of what music could be.
For some people, it can be offensive. It sounds like they're deliberately flaunting the rules. I don't view it that way. I don't think anyone's deliberately flaunting the rules. I don't think it's contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. I think rather what it is it's artistic for the sake of being original.
Hey all, thanks for watching.
Yeah, see? That was a great video, by the way. Props to this team. Really fine job. And I think how long? It's been out since 2017. So let me tell you, at least, I know you've had a lot of experience with this album, Adrian, but I know that I can tell you where I came to this album, if that's a good place to start. I first heard about it because Rolling Stone, for their 20th anniversary in 1987, they put out a list of the top 100 best classic rock albums or best albums of the last 20 years. I got to know that list really well. It was this. Okay. And this ended up informing a lot of my music choices around that time. I was looking for other things to listen to that were not already on my list. I'd kind of gone through, and you too, Adrian, I know, we'd kind of gone through the SST years, the beginnings of thrash and all that Slayer, Metallica and stuff like that. And I remember being a Repo Man and I got into Joy Division, and a few years before that, I'd found all the Zeppelin and the Floyd and the early Genesis too was around this time. So I was looking for new stuff. But this is the list where I first just learned about this album. It's number 33 on the list, right between Every Picture Tells a Story and Loaded. And so I read up on it, and it sounded really interesting. And so I got this, and this was, of course, back in the 80s. This came out, actually, this pressing in early 1989. It came in a long box. I'm sorry to say I don't have the long box anymore. This is probably one of the first actual CD editions of the album. Had a nice gatefold in there like that. Okay, and then as you can see, they had all the lyrics. So there's a whole actual booklet right here. Got all, his young Don Van Vliet, all the songs and the poetry.
I think I borrowed that. I think I remember borrowing that.
I think that's maybe, that's why I thought I should start with where I came across it. Because I think, if I remember correctly, you ended up borrowing it for a while and got to know it. Got some great art there.
Oh, yeah.
I think the speaker from Berkeley that we just saw in that video talking about this being just kind of like art. It wasn't a statement. It was just a truly naive artist, making naive art, kind of giving it the structure that you wouldn't normally hear naive art in. And that's what we have. And that's what makes this so freaking remarkable. I mean, it's a really interesting listen. And it was funny, I hadn't listened to this in maybe, 10 years, 20 years. And I put it on and I instantly recognized the whole album. I mean, because it's so unique that once you get on the roll, you can almost start, it's almost like a comedy record, you can almost wait for the next line to come up and there it is. So besides that, the only other exposure I had for a long time to Beefheart, and it still kind of holds true, are the first album, Safe as Milk, and Mirror Man. So this right? So I think I got this about the same time. Yeah, this says 1988. So it was it was a dual album, and great, it's Captain Beefheart, right? So you think, well, it must be similar to this, right? Well, no, not at all.
Not really.
The reason being, this was really more of kind of a 60s band sound. It almost sounds like a conventional band, just making conventional 60s garage singles, right? I mean, this thing is
man, it's interesting.
Yeah, this is like 4 long improv pieces, very cool, and I love it, but that's not what this is. This thing, I mean, they slaved on this record for ages. I know somebody mentioned somewhere, he said it was only 8 hours that he wrote the whole thing, and that's baloney. It's probably 8 hours per track is more like it, just to write it, and to, so it's,
I think they got a lot of the basic tracks for most of the songs in a single recording session. I heard something like 6 hours. I don't know.
Creating it, as in writing it,
Oh, yeah. No, it'd take longer than 8 hours to come up with all that.
Yeah, it might have been recorded in 8 hours. That's possible.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound bad. I mean, after all, it was done by Frank Zappa, and he knew what he was doing. He was a veteran, of record making by this time. So, I mean, the Mothers already had like 4 albums out or something, right? By the time this came out.
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 albums.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this album, Adrian?
Well, my introduction to Captain Beefheart was actually Willie the Pimp from Frank Zappa's Hot Rats album. That was the first time I ever heard anything he had done. I probably heard it in late 87 or something like that. And it wasn't until a few years later, a friend of ours had a copy of Trout Mask Replica and was playing it.
It kind of goes back. I said I got the long box. I didn't buy it in a store. You couldn't find this in a store. Unless, I mean, maybe if you could go to a Tower Record somewhere that was really well stocked, but most record stores didn't have this. And by the late 80s, you could order CDs through a catalog, through mail order.
Oh.
And it became a big thing to do. And I think it was called Noteworthy, if I remember correctly, was the name of the company. And you just sent off an order, and then, a week or two later, hey, your CDs came, and this was a big deal. This was like, I know that people have done mail order before, but it was quick, it was painless. I think you could just send a check. There was no internet at the time, so it was kind of a pre-internet way to buy stuff like that. But CDs for a while, that's how I was getting CDs, and this was one of the first ones that I got. Using that service, and it was still early on. I didn't have many CDs in my collection. I might have had like a few dozen.
I just remember I think I was listening to The Dust Blows Forward and The Dust Blows Back or something like that. And I honestly, at the time, thought I was listening to a drunk hillbilly on acid or something like that. And I've been listening ever since.
Yeah. It's very much a human experience, whatever's going on. It's not, sure doesn't sound rehearsed. It sounds human. It sounds very human. Yeah. That's the thing about it. It's the humanity, of this record. It feels like a poet is speaking to you.
It was just a wild experience listening to that record for like the first several times. And it seems like you get more of it as it goes along, it grows on you. I remember it wasn't until later that I heard Safe as Milk and Mirror Man. And Mirror Man is actually my favorite Beefheart album, but this is a very close second, the Trout Mask Replica. And
I love Mirror Man myself.
I mean, the first three albums, if you call Safe as Milk, Mirror Man, and Trout Mask Replica, are it was really an interesting experience. Also hearing Safe as Milk, and it did sound very much more like rock and roll.
So it went Safe as Milk, maybe Mirror Man, and then Trout Mask Replica?
Yeah.
Kind of how it went?
Yeah. I think next they recorded Strictly Personal, but that material for some reason didn't seem to come out until later, as far as I know. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
I do have another Beefheart album. I just forgot about it. It's in another.
Lick My Decals Off, Baby.
I think that's
that be it. Yeah, it's got it's sort of a black cover, and there's a photo in front of it with the band. It's a bit more, I guess I've heard it called cerebral or something like that than Mask Replica. But I mean, it sounds a lot the same. I mean, it's a really good album, I think, as well.
Yeah, it does. It does. Now, having said that, for some reason, this is the one I remember. I don't know if it's because I've been listening to it for so long or not, but this one I really connected with. It took a moment. First time I heard it, then I had to listen to it again. And again, it took a little time to be like, actually, there's something here. There's something here. And I had to dig for it, that kind of thing. But got there. It's definitely worthwhile to put in the time and listen to it several times. Oh, yeah. And I'll link up the video we looked at earlier. And I think I'm also going to put a link below to a guy that did a 30-minute long analysis of just Frownland, just like a music theory analysis of it. So here are the words. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your
Frownland. I love these lyrics. My spirit's made up of the ocean and the sky and the moon and all my eye can see. That's a great line.
This is an excellent poem, essentially. I mean, great words. It's really cool. Take my hand, come with me. It's not too late for you, not too late for me to find my homeland where man can stand by another man without an ego flying, no man lying, no one dying by an earthly hand. This is great.
Great stuff.
I mean, it's excellent. And then he's got like the features over here, expression of a utopian vision, which is true. That's what he's doing there. Concern with ethics, morality, idiosyncratic spell. Actually, the guy did a great job here. This is all true. It's kind of funny, actually, seeing it laid out like this.
Yeah, free verse, irregular rhyme scheme, use of syntactical parallelism.
Yeah.
Kind of opening lines at the end.
Yeah. See. Makes sense. So anyway, this is a great one. Another great one. If you're a big fan of the album, I would recommend his video too. So yeah, so definitely worthwhile and kind of a fun album to explore.
I think I said it all when I said, I thought it was a drunk hillbilly on acid, and I've been listening ever since because I love it. That's all I can say.
It's a great place to visit for sure. All right. Well, with that, please go out and check out the album. And in the meantime, if you liked this video, would you please give us a like? And if you'd like to hear us ramble on a little more about other musical topics, then just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And beyond that, we'll be back next week with something else. And we'll see you then. All right.
All right.
Here, folks.
See you guys later.